1 through 16 in Matthew.
Right. So it's subtitled Workers in the Vineyard. The kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire workers for his vineyard. After he agreed with the workers to pay them a denarian, he sent them into his vineyard. Then he went out around 9 in the morning and saw others standing around the marketplace doing nothing. He said to them, "You also go into the vineyard, and I'll pay you whatever is right." And they went. Again around noon, and then at 3 in the afternoon, he did the same thing. Around 5 in the afternoon, he went and found others standing around, and he said to them, "Why are you just standing around here doing nothing all day long?" "Because nobody has hired us," they replied. He responded, "You also go into the vineyard." When evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his manager, "Call the workers and give them their wages, beginning with the last ones hired and moving on finally to the first." When those who were hired at 5 in the afternoon came, each one received a denarian. Then when those hired first came, they thought they would receive more, but each of them also received a denarian. When they received it, they grumbled against the landowner. "Those who were hired last worked 1 hour, and they received the same pay as we did, even though we had to work the whole day in the hot sun." But he replied to one of them, "Friend, I did you no wrong. Didn't I agree to pay you a denarian? Take what belongs to you and go. I want to give to this one who was hired last the same as I give to you. Don't I have the right to do what I want with what belongs to me? Or are you resentful because I'm generous? So those who are last will be first, and those who are first will be last." This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. When I was in high school, I was a scoop jockey. That is, I worked at Baskin Robbins, scooping 2.5 ounce scoops and shaking shakes. I started at $1.61 an hour, and I got up to $2.10, which sounds very low, but I imagine it's in relatively more than the federal minimum wage is today. I enjoyed it because partly some of the friends I had in our youth group were also working there, and it was kind of an enjoyable time unless it got busy. And when it got busy, things changed, because when it got busy, we had to go to the number system. Everybody remember the number system? If you go to the Department of Licensing, you still have to do this. Everybody come in and take a number, and then we call out your number, and you were served. But everything seemed to change when we went to this number system, and it became a little more surly. And you know that feeling when you go to Starbucks and the person in front of you gets drinks and breakfast for the whole office? That feeling. And when you get that feeling, things change inside. God forbid we would mix up the numbers. Or even worse, if we decided that, no, we're going to go ahead and serve this family with a crying child. Oh my gosh, that would upset people. And of course, what they are saying inside or out is, it's not fair. When things were not busy, you could talk to customers, and it was kind of fun, but once the number system came along, everything was transactional. No longer were we persons, we became simply means to meet their needs, beholden to them for some reason. In other words, became a little bit more like Donald Trump. I recall once a church member came in when the numbers were going. He didn't recognize me. I thought maybe it's because of that triangular sailor cap that we had to wear, which was really embarrassing. It's before they used baseball caps, which I would have preferred. But he did not recognize me, and it really caught me. There's a change when things get like that. Everything becomes about economics and fairness rather than relationship and sharing. We value fairness in America. It's a myth we live by. It's one of the ways we make sense of the world. I can remember in my childhood how many times playing games, playing sports, and saying, it's not fair. Or if you like to watch sports, before the cameras caught every slice of the action and the referee got it wrong, what did we say to the screen? That's so unfair. It's elemental to our economic system as well. Our nation is built on the ideal of equality, ostensibly, but of course in the beginning it was equality amongst land-owning white people. Later it evolved or devolved into equal opportunity, and that's a hoax for you. Philosopher John Locke said we all started with a clean slate at the starting gate, which is clearly not the case. John Lewis and Donald Trump did not have equal opportunity. The youth at Cocoon House do not have equal opportunity. So we settled on fairness, feeling like that was equal, but I'm not so sure it is. Fairness is having a flat tax. Imagine maybe 30% for everyone. Now, a billionaire, 30%, that's a lot of money, but it's not going to hurt him that much. But if you make $20,000 a year, 30% is a game changer. Still, we are believers in fairness. Almost as if fairness is the same as goodness. Because we believe so much in fairness, this text, the parable of the workers in the vineyard, is one of the ones that people don't like. You know the story. A landowner went out in the morning to gather workers for his vineyard. He was going to pay them the standard wage. He came back at 9 o'clock and he saw people hanging around. So he says, you go off and into the vineyard as well and I'll pay you what is right. Then he went back at noon. He went back at 3. He went back at 5. All those different times. And when he paid them at the end, he started with the people who came at 5 and he gave them the standard wage. The people who came before got really excited because they thought, oh, that must mean we're going to get a lot more. That would be fair after all, but they didn't. And what did they say? That's not fair. Although we don't realize that most of the time the text isn't about fairness. It's nominally about equality. What it's about is justice. And then we have to hear the line that sums it up. The last will be first and the first will be last. That's unfair, isn't it? Some time ago I read an article in the New Yorker about an ethicist at Princeton named Peter Singer. Outside of academia, Singer was known for writing articles about animal rights. A strict vegetarian, Singer wonders why human life is more sacred than the life of a dog. After all, both are sentient beings. Singer believes that it would be more ethical to do experiments on disabled, unconscious human beings than on conscious animals, the value being conscious suffering. He wouldn't have a problem with killing a disabled infant if that infant was going to live either unconscious or suffering his or her whole life. He has said that it's better for a hemophiliac child to be euthanized at birth and for the parents to go back and try again. Are we feeling a little queasy? Singer's a very rational man. He wants emotion kept out of all ethical decisions. Singer is all about fairness. There are a lot of things that I agree with him about. Seatbelts, for example. Or he would find the crazy base jumpers who jump off of cliffs, as well as those mountain climbers who go up and are risking themselves and have to have the search and rescue come to rescue them. They should pay for that. He believes in helmets for motorcyclists. And I'm betting he would have trouble with a motorcycle rally that occurred in Sturgis, South Dakota. He would say they should pay some price for spreading the virus all over America. We should like Peter Singer. He's just trying to be fair. What he's really doing is taking the myth of fairness to its logical conclusions. And our problem is we don't understand or think about those logical conclusions until we start euthanizing people on hospice in order to save money. Who knows, Singer might be in favor of herd immunity. After all, maybe it is fair to cull some of the elderly population in nursing homes who are unconscious and suffering and using up very important financial resources. Wasn't it? Yes, it was. The Lieutenant Governor of Texas, Dan Patrick, even suggested, do you all remember this? That elderly people sacrifice their lives for the economy. That would only be fair, right? Something stops us when we hear this. There must be something more important and more right and more just. Often, I think we assume that fairness and justice are the same things. But sometimes it's only by doing what is unfair that justice emerges. The backdrop of the parable, as is often the case in the Bible, is the context of radical wealth and equality. The parable is suggesting that the situation cannot be made just simply by being fair. Fairness and justice are different. Fairness has to do with an equal rendering between hypothetically equal individuals in a transaction. Justice has to do with the common good. Fairness has primarily about the starting line, and that's why you have equal opportunity. Justice has to do with the finish line. God wants provisions for all. Fairness is transactional. Justice is relational. Fairness focuses on the short term. Justice focuses on the long term, even beyond our individual lives. Fairness is always logical and reasonable. Sometimes justice is not logical at all. Fairness is always objective. Justice can be subjective and objective. Fairness is largely about individuals. Justice includes communities. Fairness is yoked with quantitative measurement. The Yankees won fair and square, but justice knows that the Yankees have too much money, and that's a justice issue. The Bible doesn't mention fairness much. It mentions justice and righteousness all the time. With this in mind, let's think about the conundrums that we've recently been facing. One could theoretically and reasonably say that since white men were the ones who started this country, they should be the ones who remain in charge of it. That's only fair. I assure you, there are people out there who are feeling this and expressing this. Is it just? Of course it isn't. Affirmative action is not fair, but it is just. Remember, fairness is just considering individuals. Justice looks at the long term, both the past and the future, even considers things beyond our own lives. Justice seeks the common good. Reparations for Black Americans would be just, but if that happened, everybody would say it's not fair. The invisible hand of the market is just, is it? I've heard many times when I complain about exorbitant salaries for, say, CEOs and professional athletes, they will say, what's important is whatever the market will bear. That's fair from a capitalist perspective, but it sure as hell ain't just. One could say that a person who doesn't have health insurance probably made bad decisions in order to get there, so it's only fair that they don't have it. Is it just? I wonder what Dr. Singer would say about pre-existing conditions. Would it be fair to deny them insurance because it would cost the rest of the group too much? Would that be just? And what about guns? What is fair and what is really just? Regarding personal freedoms, one could make the argument that their legal use is fair. From a justice perspective, no. Justice isn't grounded in personal freedom. It's grounded in the common good. At the end of the article in the New Yorker on Dr. Singer, it said that his own mother fell victim to Alzheimer's, put in a nursing home, and if he followed his rational, utilitarian, ethical formula, what would be fair is for him to have her euthanized. Do you think he did? No. Instead, he hired private healthcare professionals to take care of her, and he even says, perhaps it is more difficult than I thought before because it's different when it's your mother. And here's the thing. From the perspective of Jesus, everyone is a mother, a child, a brother, a sister, a cousin. The root of justice is not found in fairness, but in compassion. Goodness does not evolve from fairness, but compassion. We've been blinded by a lens that is concocted and connected to the values of capitalist economy that focuses on fairness and transaction. You know, for Trump, everything is transactional and soulless. The lens we need is based upon compassion and justice, to see with the eyes of Jesus. In the parable, the owner of the vineyard goes back to see other workers hanging around and idle. He wasn't thinking about his business or fairness. He was compassionate. Perhaps wondering if they don't work, how are they going to feed their families? That's how I see it. COVID-19 has exposed again the injustice of wealth equality in America. And I believe that we should do something that would be seen by perhaps most Americans as terribly unfair. And that would be to return to the maximum tax rate in the 1950s. Does anybody know what that was? Raise your hand if you do. 90%. For there to be justice, we need compassion and not fairness. And we need a little more of the first will be last and the last will be first. We need what John Lewis called good trouble. Actually, we need some unfairness, so let's call it good unfairness. We need some good unfairness.